Hi, welcome to the Indie Wine Podcast. My name is Matt Wood, and this is episode 60. We're going to take a quick break from the California Wine Association series to talk with the Perlegos brothers, Jeff and John, about Perlegos family wines. You've probably had wines made from their grapes by Maitre de Fields family, Bedrock, Harmeyer, Sandlands, Sibeli Frisch, and some others. Since 2020, they've been producing their own wines, most from fruit that they farm and others from some of the best growers in Lodi. The wines are balanced with moderate alcohols and bright acids. We talk about their upbringing and Greek heritage, their Stampede and Cherry House vineyards, why they started producing their own wines, and the 2 Assyrtiko plantings that they farm. We recorded this episode at the Lodi Wine Commission offices and the Lodi Visitor Center. It's a great place to try and to purchase wines from Perlegos and other small Lodi producers that might not have a public tasting room. A quick reminder that there's a link to a Patreon in the show notes if you'd like to support the podcast with a donation to help me keep telling wine stories ad-free. Or you can also help by just telling a friend that you enjoy it. Here we go. Yeah, you guys kind of started out, kind of grew up in the grape and grocery store business, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When we were born, our parents already owned a vineyard that we grew up on and a grocery store. So if you want to get into a little bit of the family history.
Yeah, I'd love to hear some of that.
So my dad had immigrated here to the U.S. from Greece, and both my parents are from Greece. Both our parents are from Greece. And really just, came here, was fairly educated, especially given how, poor he grew up there, but came here with no language and, no money really. And had one uncle here in town. And so that's what kind of led the migration to Lodi, of all places in the U.S.
Okay. Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of Greek immigrants tend to go to New York, Chicago, in those places. But anyway, so he had an uncle here, and really he lived, he was a field worker, was a farm worker when he first started, and was able to save up, and eventually was able to, find other, he got out of the fields, did other things, and ended up working at a factory, and then kept saving, and then was able to one day, I guess, fulfill his dream, and he bought a little grocery store.
Okay.
And so saved up again, bought a piece of land that had a vineyard on it, got married, had kids, etc. But yeah, so we grew up on a vineyard doing that, and also working 7 days a week at our parents' grocery store.
Yeah.
Stocking shelves and mopping floors,
mopping floors, stocking shelves, cash register, bagging groceries,
Yeah.
taking out the cars.
Normal free child labor stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got paid in all the comic books I could read and and collect. And yeah, it was. Thinking back on it, it was a pretty unique upbringing, and I don't think many people had that kind of experience. But yeah, no, we worked 7 days a week. Almost. Yeah. I'd say we had how many, John? 3 days off a year, and we were open 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. So it was a lot of hard work. But the one thing though is that we were always together as a family. So mom, dad, the 2 of us, and because we were a grocery store, we always had high schoolers working for us.
Okay.
And so John and I had a lot of big brother and big sister influences growing up. So in the good way and bad way, in every which way, it was always a lot of fun, for sure. It was a really fun environment. Worked hard and definitely played hard though too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure with the older kids there and everything.
They had a lot of influence on us, for sure. Yeah. We learned a lot of things we wouldn't have learned, I think.
We had a high school education when we were in elementary school.
Okay. High school street
education. Smart, yeah.
Street education. In elementary school.
Yeah. Wine wasn't really something you saw yourselves ever going into probably, though, at that point, right?
For sure. We worked, we were outside a lot. We worked in the vineyards during the heat, during our summer breaks and things of that nature. And so for us, right, John? I mean, I think the vineyards were just like, it was just work that we really didn't want to do, that we had to do. It was part of our responsibilities, of course, but it was a chore for sure. Thinking back on it now, it wasn't as bad as we thought about it at the time. But certainly didn't want to be outside in the heat. Would have preferred to be more in the store where it was air conditioned. But no, we had to do our fair share of work in the vineyards for sure.
Or riding bikes with friends and doing what normal young kids do, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately or unfortunately, we were sometimes given responsibilities in the vineyard or some responsibilities in the grocery store.
Okay.
Yeah, and we grew up in the country, so we didn't really have a neighborhood or neighborhood kids to run around with. So that was supplemented by vineyard work and grocery store work. But thinking back on it now, I think it was pretty amazing. Like
And fun.
and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, to answer your question, no, I never thought, oh, I can't wait to get older so I can be in the vineyard every day or pursue wine or anything of that nature. So no, that was the furthest thing from the truth. I think I imagined myself of, going off to peeling out, going off to college, peeling out and never to return. But it didn't really work out that way. That's for sure.
Actually, Jeff beat me back to Lodi, right? He moved his family back
6 years
6 years ago.
Yeah,
So
6 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
So
But we were always, still connected, even though we went off to college. We were here most weekends. We didn't go very far. I was to Sacramento, and even when we started working professionally, we were here all the time during the growing season, for sure.
Yeah, you had said that's kind of what drew you back, is that you were going back and forth a lot.
Yeah, we were pretty much every weekend. John and I were traveling here. Not traveling here. We were living and John still does live in the South Bay, but I lived in Santa Clara for 25 years. But yeah, during the growing season, I'd say almost every weekend.
or
many
one of
times-
us, we'd switch. We'd find a way to have a normal life while managing vineyards in Lodi.
But we were here a lot.
Yeah.
And going back and forth a lot, and a lot of the times we were going back and forth with our families, and as families as kids get older, it becomes a little bit more challenging to make that commitment. To commit to that every weekend, and so at some point, my wife and I decided to move back here. She's from here as well, and we made that move just to make that a little bit easier for us.
Yeah. At what point did you guys kind of take over, I guess, the more kind of active work with the vineyard?
What would you say, like 20 years ago?
Well, like when we were in high school, our father passed away, and so we had to bump up our responsibilities quite a bit at that point, in the store and of course in the vineyards, to kind of take a more of an active role. I say that, but my mom was a champion for us for sure, and carried us through the rest of high school and while we were in college. And I'd say probably sometime when we were in college, we started to take a little bit more of an active role. In the day-to-day management.
Yeah.
Just started being the interface. She was starting to kind of let go a little bit more of that part. I mean, she's always been the finance person.
Sure.
She pays all the bills and writes all the checks, and we get to spend the money. But no, we started taking more of an active role, I'd say, in college, and especially after we graduated college, for sure.
And that vineyard was still kind of a more production vineyard.
Correct.
At the time, right?
Correct. Yeah. No, and we still own that vineyard. We had, we've expanded, contracted over the years, but I mean, most of Lodi was production vineyards, right?
Yeah.
That's the culture. Of course, there's definitely special vineyards and special pockets out there, but yeah, no, for the most part, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And that's the fuel that fuels the area here. But yeah, no, it was a production vineyard. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, now you guys are kind of known for one of those kind of special places, though, with the Stampede Vineyard. That seems like it's really kind of popped out and become one of those like special vineyards
Thank
in
you.
Lodi.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we didn't really go from 0 to 60 overnight. It was
Yeah.
there's I think part of the story there is as we started, we went to college, we pursued our other interest, and then there was a point where we started working in other industries, yet still being here every day, or every weekend, let's say during the growing season. We along the way, I think we started to appreciate what we had and how we grew up, being in the vineyards as opposed to being in an office every day.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, we have to maintain those jobs, and we enjoy those jobs, but it's nothing like being outside and out in the vineyards and being with nature every day. But as we started down other career paths, I think we started to become fond of what we had and what we still had, and we're still part of. And so we started kind of the script kind of flipped. I think we started to I can't wait for the weekend so that I can be out in the vineyards. Right? It kind of started in that way, and then we started to, I think, as we worked more, started to fall in love with wine more and more.
Yeah.
Right, really started to love the product. I mean, we were in it every day, and so at some point, I think we had those bottles that kind of changed, I think, the course of our lives.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And for me, and I'll let John speak, but like our uncle made homemade wine, and I think I just had a homemade Zinfandel and was just shocked at just how good, not only how good wine could be, complex, and I mean it was an amazing wine, but also that a wine from here, a wine from Lodi, could be that good. And it was I think a light bulb went off, and we had a few other bottles that really helped us fall in love with wine as well. And I think we started to put two and two together, and like, wow, we can do something special here if we just try. Yeah. And like I had mentioned, maybe when we were talking beforehand, Lodi has the reputation that it had. And you earn your way into a reputation, and you have to earn your way out of the reputation. So we wanted to, I think, from that point on, try to work to help ourselves and our reputation and Lodi and its reputation, just whatever part where we could contribute to that. We just fell in love with wine and really wanted to be a lot better. We thought we could be better than what people had thought of us. So I think we started pouring more and more of our efforts into learning how to be better growers. I think that's where it all started. Started taking a lot of courses, started reading a lot, started studying a lot, and putting what we learned into practice, even though it was a production vineyard. So hopefully we didn't sacrifice too many tons with those experiments, but I think we probably did. And that's kind of just how the transitions happened to be better farmers first. To take care of our land in a much better way than what we had before, and grow better wine grapes. Around the same time, we started making a lot of homemade wine. We started wanting to learn about that, and along the way, just kind of had this idea and dream kind of popped up to maybe one day we could have our own project. But no, it all started in the land, improving the land, and then realizing just how important what we were doing, or just how important terroir was, and what special vineyards could do. I think we kind of had this idea of maybe one day we could own something that's very special in Lodi, in our area. And just lo and behold, just by chance, the opportunity had come up to acquire Stampede Vineyard through a friend and his friend, who was a real estate agent. It was a little bit of a pocket listing, and we were fortunate enough to, after a long negotiation and in and out of escrow, make the deal work eventually.
That's great. And what year was that?
That was 2012.
2012.
So not too long ago, but 2012, late 2012, we were able to acquire Stampede Vineyard. And then the deal with Stampede Vineyard is when we purchased it, the seller at the time, two contiguous pieces, and so we had to buy both. Two vineyards. So one was a Merlot on wire, and Stampede Vineyard, both contiguous. You know, the pump was on the Merlot side, so we really couldn't live without it either. And but that vineyard was leased out to a management company or a packing shed, really, and so they managed it for the first basically 10 years that we owned the properties. And only last few years has it come to our hands as well. But yeah, so we had those two vineyards, and then we also were able to purchase another older vineyard here on the west side of town that we call Cherry House. Which is now a 48-year-old head pruned.
Almost old vine.
Yeah.
Awfully close.
By historical Vineyard Society standards. So yeah, it'll be in 2026, that'll be a 50-year-old vineyard. So it's getting there.
Yeah.
It's getting there.
John, were there any wines that really kind of got you more interested in it? Some homemade Zin also or anything?
Homemade Zin, I think, travels to like Santorini really inspired me probably in the early 2000s, you know, for the first time I ever tried like a Certico. That was an experience. I think that going to just traveling across like places in Europe where you do try different wines, and you come to the like Jeff said.
Well, you went to Italy a lot.
Went to Italy, went to France a lot for other jobs, and was able to experience. I was able to experience different wines of the world, and you know, kind of fell in love with most wines come from Europe, but like European varietals and maybe European style of winemaking. So yeah, that's what kind of inspired me, and lo and behold, you know, we were fortunate enough. I think you're probably going to get there anyway, right? Where Jeff was describing the Merlot, we took out a portion of the Merlot, and we were able to replant some Certico here in Lodi. So
so we both kind of had like independent paths towards falling in love with wine, and then we're like, well, we own vineyards and we're here, and I think our region can, you know, we can grow very high quality grapes in our region, especially if there's some intent behind the farming, and that just kind of led us to where we're at today.
Yeah. What was that Stampede vineyard like when you purchased it? Did it require some rehabilitation, or was it
some? I mean, yeah. So
more than some.
So hold on. Before Jeff gets into the details of the story, Jeff first found the vineyard and convinced me to go walk it with him. And I think after about 5 minutes, I said, "Okay, we're done. We're not going to purchase this vineyard." But you know, he had vision, and you know, he slowly convinced me that, you know, we could make something special out there. And you know, it's like you buy an old house, you rehab it, you make it look like it's completely different.
It wasn't that it was not like healthy. It was just like a lot of weeds. There's like, had, and it's not that it's gone away, but it still has a pretty big weed problem with Johnson grass. And Johnson grass is this, it's like the devil's weed, man. It like grows like 7 feet tall. And if you were to look at the vineyard around harvest, it would feel like you were in cornrows, right? It was just completely overshadows the vineyard. It gets so tall. And when I was walking through the vineyard, and the top of it's got like a seed and it rattles. So you think there's like a rattlesnake chasing you everywhere when you're walking through the vineyard as the wind's blowing through these weeds. It was quite covered in this. But you know, fortunately, when we were courting the vineyard, it was close to harvest. So there were grapes to try, and we're like, wow, look, like, John, taste the grapes. The grapes are really good. Like there's potential here. And I think he did. And
I mean, a few trips back. Yeah. After a few trips back.
And we decided to, you know,
move forward.
Try to move forward with it. But it was really tasting the grapes. And then we also saw that there was, you know, a little bit of a mixed, it's not hugely mixed vineyard, but there's definitely some variety in the vineyard. And we thought, oh, this is kind of a special place. We're in the middle of nowhere, out in Clements, 25 miles northeast of Lodi. There's not a lot of, there's some history of vineyards in the area, but not much. It's not like the Mokelumne River area of Lodi, or let's say right around Lodi proper, because there's just not access to water out there, at least in the old days. But it was an old vineyard. Somehow somebody thought this would make a great spot for it, and it survived 100 years, right?
Yeah.
There was a few other old vines in the area, not many.
Okay.
Of course, now with modern pump and irrigation technology, sure, there's a ton more vineyards out there today, but no, it was an old vineyard, middle of nowhere. The grapes were great, and we thought we'd make a go of it.
Yeah.
So we did.
You started to kind of rehab the vineyard, and then it seems like most of your sales of grapes from it, at least the first few years, maybe to wineries outside of Lodi. Like, how'd that happen, or how did people kind of start finding out about it? Because it seems like you've always kind of sold to some pretty great producers from that vineyard. Yeah,
well, our first year of farming the vineyard was 2013.
Okay.
And I mean, the one thing that we've done from the start is really focused on the soil. So we've always composted, incorporated compost, cover crops, stuff like that. So we started to try to improve the soil. But to answer your question specifically, it just kind of got lucky a little bit. I mean, we tried to shop the vineyard around to some bigger local areas or bigger local growers, but they just, it also had to make economic sense, and we just weren't going to they were not going to value the old vines as we thought some specialty producers would. So it sounds a little corny, but we just put it up on winebusiness.com classifieds. And, and then, two people answered. One locally here, Fields Family was the first to call us up and say that they were in. Of course, there were smaller wineries. What they could take was limited. But that kind of gave us a sense that, maybe we're onto something here. And then, the ad was answered by Morgan Twain Peterson of Bedrock Vineyard. And so we worked with Bedrock from that year. Morgan came out, we visited the vineyard together. We helped put the name together, which we can talk about as well. And then we sold to Bedrock, to Fields. And then from there, that just gave the vineyard a lot of street cred.
Okay.
No doubt about it. And then they would recommend it to a couple other folks. And that's where Maitre Duché came in for the following year in 2014. Okay. And then since then, it's just been, more and more smaller, kind of cool producers that have, sourced from the vineyard. And people have come in and out since then. But that's kind of how we got our start. It really was Fields Family and Bedrock, and then Maitre Duché.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just word just got out.
Yeah.
Word got out, and people kept asking about purchasing grapes, and we made them available.
And here we are today. And then, I mean, the way that the vineyard got its name was, actually not that difficult. Right outside, our neighbors to the vineyard that we share a property line with to the east is the Clements Buckaroos Rodeo Grounds. And then they, on and off, but mostly on, had a annual event called the Clements Stampede. It's the nation's oldest amateur rodeo. So I believe it started in the 1940s.
Okay.
And they had this rodeo event that was quite popular.
Yeah.
So popular, in fact, that they had this huge sign that's right at the entrance of our vineyard where our properties border of what basically was a marquee for the event and the location, but more for the event. Clements Stampede. It's just, you cannot drive past it and not see it. And there's a guy riding a bucking bronco. I mean, it's quite an amazing sign that they have, very eye catching. So how can you not call it the Vineyard Stampede Vineyard when that is right, basically on your property line? Yeah. Just a quick side note. Currently, the sign's not there only because somebody hit it last winter, but it's going to be replaced. I've been told by the rodeo grounds.
Oh, there is a small.
There's something to denote the place, but that particular awesome. I don't know if you've seen pictures.
I've driven past.
It's somebody I think fell asleep and basically hit the sign, and they had to take it off for safety reasons. But it's going to be. They're planning on replacing it.
It'll be back.
Yeah, it's so amazing.
Yeah. Maybe you guys can get the little one put in front of the vineyard or something.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
That's a good way to get a name for it, though.
Yeah.
So it was kind of planted in the 20s. It's kind of a prohibition era.
Very difficult to put the history together, but we've done as much research as we think we can. What we try to do is obviously look for any aerial photography that been available, and also do as much research down the county records as much as possible. What we know kind of who've done a little bit of a chain of title. We're able to tell kind of who owned the properties throughout the years, and the oldest ones that were known to be growers. Were basically two partners. One was J.J. Zeckmeister, and the other one is C.H. Seuss is the way that you pronounce the name. Spelled like Seuss, but E and the U is transposed of Dr. Seuss that we know.
Yeah.
But J.J. Zeckmeister, in his obituary, was known as a vineyardist. So he would have been. Those have been the most likely candidates for having planted the vineyard.
Okay.
And they took it over right in 1920, probably right around Prohibition time. They probably planted the vineyard. We have found some aerial photography from the USDA. So the USDA, now it would probably be the U.S. Geological Service that does this, but the USDA in those days would go around with an airplane and take a gazillion aerial photos and then kind of lump them all together and then take a photo of the collage of photos. But you can see you can still find the overall photo and then each little individual ones that make up the puzzle, basically.
Yeah.
And those exist, I think, at UC Davis, and also there's a historical museum at our regional park here called Mickey's Grove. They have all these amazing old photos. So I can show them to you when we're off as well. But there is a USDA photo shoot that they did in 1934.
Okay.
And you can see all of Loda, you can see basically all of San Joaquin County almost.
Yeah.
And so we're able to find this piece of land back in the day, and lo and behold, there's vineyards planted on probably by 1934. I think it was about 2/3 of the vineyard was planted.
Okay.
Yeah, 2/3 of the vineyard was planted, and definitely like half of that, or let's say half the vineyard, looked to be of age by then. Mm-hmm. You can only tell so much from an aerial photo, because there's also an area that looked like there's younger vines. Okay. And so the older ones looked like they were much bigger, and maybe some had been replanted because there's some smaller vines that was planted in there as well. So it kind of makes sense that within those were like 10 to 15-year-old plants, the older ones. So that's why we think the original planting of most of the vineyard was in the early 1920s, call it 1920, probably Prohibition era vineyard. And then by 1934, about 2/3 of the vineyard was planted.
Okay. And
then that vineyard was sold to the family that we purchased it from, and that was sold to them in 1940.
Okay.
Two brothers, and the family's called the Lane family. So it was in the Lane family from 1940 till we bought it in 2012, and then in that time they kind of planted the rest of the vineyard as we know it today. So I think it started in 1920, and then by 1940 it was complete, right after they purchased it.
Okay. And much of it's planted, you kind of have a diamond planting pattern out there for a lot of it, right?
Yeah. So the vineyard is planted 10 feet by 10 feet, but of course in the vine row it's 10 feet, and then you expect a vine to be at a right angle to that, at 90 degrees, basically. You expect another vine 10 feet from that, but there's nothing there. There's just an empty spot. But if you look a little bit, further up, it's basically 10 feet at a diagonal to the other vine. So it's 10 by 10, but in a diamond pattern.
Yeah.
So The question is why?
Yeah.
Why would they have done that? One reason could be because the way that the street that's in front of the vineyard is Highway 88, and it's also Highway 12. They merge and then they diverge at some point, maybe a mile past our vineyard. So people, Highway 12, believe it or not, I think starts in Sebastopol and goes all the way to San Andreas. So it encompasses pretty much the heart of the Northern California vineyards, period, right?
Right.
But yeah, it including going right past our vineyard. And the way that one reason could be that it's kind of at a diagonal at that point. So if you have to really look at a map to appreciate it, but they may have just planted every 10 feet across the property line, which would have been at a diagonal.
Okay.
And then just did every 10 feet, north of there. Could be one reason. The other reason could be that in those days, the vineyard is not flat. So there are hills, undulations, etc. So there's no way you could have furrow irrigated that vineyard. We grew up furrow irrigating, and it kind of led us to not want to be in vineyards. And it's difficult as it is, even if your vineyard is plain and flat.
Right.
But if it's not, you have to build dams, you have to do all this kind of stuff. There's way too many hills and undulations to have even done that.
Okay.
And so it would have been dry farmed. And so I believe by planting it the way they did, they probably had a couple more angles where they could remove, plow and remove weeds.
Okay.
And it also probably gives the vines the roots a little bit more of an area to meandering, because they don't have a competition directly to it's east and west, let's say. It's just a little bit more to the north and to the south. And so maybe it would have allowed a little bit more area for them to explore and seek out water and nutrients.
Yeah.
Those are the only, I can't really think of anything else.
Yeah.
It had to be one of those reasons.
And I only know of I've had one other guest on that they have a diamond pattern,
really?
But that's it. Or those are the only two I know of.
Was it an older vineyard also, or?
Yeah, possibly around the same time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Viano in Martinez, part of their vineyard.
Oh, okay.
Is diamond.
It is. Okay, yeah.
But I don't know exactly what era. Again, same thing where I think some was planted in the 1880s, some was planted around the turn of the century, some in the 20s.
Yeah.
So, but
no, I mean,
that's the only other one I know of.
Yeah, and for sure there's a reason, and there's a logical reason. It's hard to put. I'm trying to put my mind in the 1920s, into the 1920s, and try to figure out why. That's the best reasons I can come up with. But yeah, there's definitely a reason for everything that was done. People just didn't do things arbitrarily.
Yeah. Just be lost to time a little bit.
Did they give you any reason why theirs was planted in a diamond?
I don't think they know, and I think it was part that was planted before they purchased it. I think they purchased it in the 20s, and I think it was planted. That part was planted before.
Okay.
So, again, it remains a mystery to me, at least.
And the vineyard is, not 100% Zinfandel. So as it was planted, let's say before we bought it, because we've definitely done some, filled in the blanks, and we filled it in with stuff that's not Zinfandel. But there's definitely a lot of old vine mission that's in the vineyard.
Okay.
And there's a little bit of like some old Mourvèdre, some old Cinsault, definitely some old Tokay in there. What else? We found a couple old Grenaches, but we filled it in with some Alicante Boucher, some more Grenache.
Okay.
Petit Syrah, just to kind of hopefully just add to the complexity of the vineyard. So some of the young plants are planted to things that are not that, but the oldest vineyard, the vines there, Zinfandel, Mission, quite a bit.
Okay.
Mourvèdre,
And the real old
Mourvèdre,
stuff.
Cinsault, Tokay, and a little bit. I found a few old Grenache as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those are just all sprinkled
in
randomly, pretty much.
Randomly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're just walking along. You're like, this vine does not look like Zinfandel.
Yeah.
It does not, the leaf doesn't, and the vine doesn't,
Right.
and the cluster doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's usually Mission.
Okay.
Mission is the one that's quite prominent in there, especially during harvest. It's always cool because there's all this black fruit coming in, and obviously most of it is Zinfandel, and then you just get this sprinkle of Mission. Sometimes it's depending on the year. Sometimes it's colored up, and so it still stands out. It's kind of this kind of grayish purple color, and it really stands out. And then if it's not as ripe as it's pretty yellow and green, and the harvesters always ask, "Are we supposed to pick these?" And I'm like, "Yes, everyone wants that."
Yeah,
because that's the acid addition that they don't have to pay for, right? That's the acid add, and it has quite a bit of tannin too. Mission does, at least in our vineyard, quite a bit of tannin. So it adds some structure, adds acid. Even the Zinfandel has got plenty of acid and tannin, but the Mission just amplifies that.
Yeah. Is the Cherry House Vineyard, is that pretty much exclusively Zinfandel, or does it have other?
Done
like
99.
99. I don't think.
Yeah. Okay. Not a noticeable
No,
amount.
There's a few,
anything.
definitely non.
Yeah.
But no, it's primarily Zinfandel.
Yeah.
That one. No, that one's Stampede is own rooted, so that's planted on its own roots, and we did the testing to try to verify that, or just to see what rootstock we had, and it came out as vinifera. And then, but Cherry House was planted on St. George rootstock.
Okay.
In the mid 1970s. And it's hard to fathom that the mid 1970s are almost 50 years, 50 years ago. But that is exciting because it means there's a lot of 50-year-old vineyards out there that are not Zinfandel that are coming online and that are going to be I guess cataloged in the Historic Vineyard Society as well. But but that vineyard is 99.9% Zinfandel and St. George.
How are the characteristics of that vineyard differ from Stampede, as far as soil or the types of wine that you feel like it produces?
So Stampede is out in Clements Hills, right? So if for those that are listening that don't know, if they can find Lodi on the map, just look about 25 miles northeast of Lodi. It's actually technically closer to Amador County line than it is to the city of Lodi city limits, So it's quite a bit north and east. The soils for Clements Hills in general are kind of red, rocky, lots of clay, and so very, very red. But our vineyard, it kind of hugs the old, it's very close to the Mokelumne River, number one. And it kind of hugs what I would call like the floodplain of where the Mokelumne would have flooded before, let's say, they dammed Comanche and they set up the series of dams up in the foothills. So I would say in the old days, if it was a flood year, all that alluvium would come down and wash up on our vineyards, and do that over a million years. We had this huge kind of sandy loam deposit over what is normally the base, which is red rocky clay loam. I mean, if you go right across the street from Stampede Vineyard, that's exactly where that other soil series becomes very prominent, and you can see it. So ours probably has several feet, tens of feet probably, of this alluvium though that's over it, just because it was the old floodplain. And actually, if you go to the very north of Stampede Vineyard, there's quite a bit of a bluff. There's a big fall off from there that goes into this plain that I'm describing to you. I think locals would probably know what I'm talking about. But so I think at Stampede, we have kind of the best of both worlds. We have what is Tokay fine sandy loam over this traditional gravelly, rocky clay loam that Clements Hills has. The Cherry House is on the west side of town, which is basically Tokay fine sandy loam, but it's a little bit more clay. It's a little bit more. It's not sticky at all, but it's not as sandy as some of the other areas maybe that are just on the east side of Lodi. So it tends to produce fruit that's actually has a little bit more color, I'd say, and a little bit more plush and round, whereas Stampede tends to be slightly more austere in the sense that there's definitely it has a lot of structure. The site has a lot of structure, believe it or not. Lots of tannin, lots of acid and tannin is kind of what the vineyard is known for, and why the folks that work with us want to work with the vineyard.
Yeah, it almost feels a little more like a mountain wine, a little bit to me. Some Stampede.
I think
in some ways,
I think like Randy Caparoso says, it's like an in-betweener vineyard where we're halfway to the foothills from Lodi, and it kind of tastes like that. Like we get maybe like the little bit of that plush fruit that Lodi is known for, but yet has the structure of like a mountain vineyard. So it's kind of like a in-betweener vineyard. Yeah. And there's a few other old in-between vineyards like that out there as well. But it has that kind of feeling of riding. It's going to get the best of both worlds there. Whereas if you want a real plush, real, more fruit-forwardy type of Zinfandel, I think that comes from like our Cherry House vineyard.
Cherry House, yeah. What got you guys started in making your wine? This will be third vintage? Fourth vintage?
We started making wine in 2020.
So fifth vintage.
Fifth vintage.
Yeah.
Fifth vintage, okay.
We launched the brand 2 years ago.
Okay.
In 2022. But took our first fruit in 2020.
Okay. What was the sort of your inclination to do that? Is it a long time coming, or?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think we had started talking about starting a wine brand at some point in our lives, and I think like during the early time of COVID, we had a lot of time on our hands, stuck in our homes, and we just started having some conversations about maybe doing it now, and if we don't, because I was approaching, Jeff was approaching 50, I was in my mid 40s, and we're like, well, if we don't do it now, we probably will never do it. We won't have the right time.
I mean, it was something we were planning
time
since we were
hands.
in our 20s, right? And then we were looking at approaching the big 5-0, which is hard for me to say even to this day. And we're like, if we don't do it now,
we'll never do it. So we started making the wine. We found the facility where we were going to make our wines and started working on the paperwork. There's, as you probably know, you just don't start up a vineyard. I mean, a winery, and you open up shop, right? It takes time, and there's a big effort. So we started making wine, started doing everything that we needed to do behind the scenes to.
And I think if you own vineyards that are low yielding, the economics these days just doesn't really pan out. That's why you see a lot of old vineyards being ripped out. And I think, it was the dream to start our own vineyard project.
Yeah.
But also, along with that, the best way of helping old wine stay in the ground is twofold. One, finding partners that value that and are willing to pay a little bit more than the county average, a lot more than the county average, to help offset that cost. And then, but the real, I think, the real important thing is, if you can, is to make wine from your vineyards to help add some additional value as well. And when you do that, I think the costs probably pencil out a lot better. Yeah. Of course, I'm talking about making not just a few tons like we do today, but if we are successful enough where we can increase our production from our old vines, then they'd really start to pan out financially, and that would definitely help keep them in the ground for hopefully generations to come. I think that's the key.
Yeah.
So it was really twofold. One, we really, really wanted to have our own project and do our own thing, and maybe make a little bit of a name for ourselves. And then also, this just helps bring up the vineyards as well. Mm-hmm. It really does help the vineyards.
Yeah, and I guess you wanted to focus mainly on kind of Mediterranean varieties, going back, I guess, the Greek heritage. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like one of the overarching kind of themes of the project, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you had asked us 30 years ago, we would have wanted to make Cabernet or something else. But no, I think, we wanted to have our own identity and also just stand out and be as unique as possible. Yeah. And we just thought we'd lean into our heritage. Of course, we can't just have, because Greek is a difficult language. The varieties are difficult to pronounce, and most of them are obscure. But instead of just focusing on Greek varieties and Zinfandel, we said, well, maybe having more of a Mediterranean feel and focus would be a little bit more acceptable to the market and kind of still represent what we really love. And so, so obviously Zinfandel we're going to claim is Mediterranean since it has a Croatian heritage. So we can claim that. But no, we wanted to plant, and we did both, plant and graft over some Assyrtiko. We planted our first Assyrtiko in 2018, and a couple other varieties as well. But and then we grafted over in 21. The part of the Merlot vineyard that we had over to Assyrtiko. But so today we grow Zinfandel, and of course Assyrtiko. We grow Merlot. We do a red wine blend with our Merlot and some purchased fruit, some Carignan Cinsault, also Mediterranean varieties, and then
and Nero d'Avola.
And we source some Nero d'Avola from our friend Jake. So keep it Sicilian, I guess, that way. But no, we're really focused on grapes from that part, that, or at least were originally from that part of the world.
When you started planting the Assyrtiko, was that just, it's a grape that you guys really enjoy, something you thought would grow well here, kind of a hunch? So you have a couple different plantings of it.
Two.
Okay.
Yeah. One is an own-rooted planting. So when I think we fell in love with the wine first, and we know we've been to Santorini multiple times, just way before it was cool to go, when it was way cheaper than it is now. And so I think we really fell in love with the wine there, but also the idea of having the wine kind of transports you back to this beautiful island, right? But we've been there. We know how warm and hot it can be there, and we're like, well, if one day we could bring this grape here, maybe it would do pretty well in Lodi, right? I'm not saying it's Santorini. We'd have different soils, but it does really well and maintains its acidity, most importantly, in a very, very warm environment. And the nurseries at the time didn't have the material, but did not.
Okay.
But UC Davis did.
Okay.
And in fact, Dr. Olmo, when he went on one of his global grapevine research hunts, took clippings of it and brought it back with him, or had it sent. I don't know exactly how it went down, but it's basically been in the States since the early 1940s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Or late 1940s. Sorry, I think it was 1948, if I'm not mistaken. So it's been here since post-World War II, under our nose, and nobody really did anything with it.
Yeah.
I know that through the persuasion of Daryl Cordy, that the brothers up in New Clairvaux had planted it, I think in 2011. Okay. So they were, I think, the first ones in the country probably to have planted it. We found that UC Davis had it. So at the time, UC Davis sold green growing potted plants. They don't anymore.
Oh, really?
But back then they did, own rooted plants. So we purchased, like 100 vines, 150 vines of this own-rooted potted plants, little 4-inch pots, very tiny pots, not the pots that you see that the nurseries provide you. So we planted it in 2018 and nurtured it, and the intent was to have enough material so that we could graft over the section of the Merlot that we eventually grafted over. But if you fast forward to 2021, by then there was material available at the nurseries. Okay. So now there is. Then there wasn't. Now there is. And so we didn't really need to grow it for that purpose. So we decided to make wine from it. Yeah. So now we're not only crazy enough to have one Assyrtiko, now we're going to be coming out with the second one which is an older planting, but an own-rooted version. So grafted and own-rooted version.
Okay. So there'll be two separate wines?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Very, very small production on the own-rooted. Very, very small. Yeah. Very tiny.
What are the differences you notice in the two, and those cutting or the own rooted that's at the Stampede vineyard.
No, it's at a different spot.
Okay.
It's just on the side of another little test area that we
Okay.
have at one of the production vineyards that we have.
Oh, got it. Okay.
But no, it's in that city. And there's two different clones of a surgical that are planted there. Only one of them is available now, but there's two actually. The biggest differences that I've seen, well, one, we had to learn how to grow our surgical because obviously we weren't going to grow them in baskets like they do in Santorini. There's a specific reason they do that for, is because of wind and those.
Okay.
There's so much wind that the sand actually becomes a projectile object too that it can hit and bruise the fruit. But the vines are what we discovered. The vines are pretty brittle when they're young and new. Like the shoots are pretty brittle.
Yeah.
So I can see why in Santorini they put it in a basket, because all the shoots that grow up are kind of touching each other, and there's kind of a strength in numbers, and they kind of protect each other from just collapsing. Because we had intended on when we first planted the unrooted portion to do it head prune. And so we did have a pretty big windstorm, which kind of, I was driving through the vineyard and saw that, oh my gosh, I don't know, 10, 15, 20% of the vines had toppled over from the wind. So now I'm like, aha, that's why and now I see why they do that. It's Santorini.
Yeah.
And so, and also just, as a side note too, one of the benefits of having gone to Greek school all our lives is to read and learn how to write in Greek. And so we can read some of the literature as well. And we read that it doesn't really grow a lot of fruit from a basil bud. So that's why, in effect, it's cane pruned, right? Even in Greece, right? Even though it's they take 3 or 4 canes and wrap them around, it's cane pruned. So we converted to cane pruning at that time as well. And finally, we were able to get some fruit because we were like, man, it doesn't really fruit that much. But anyway, what we found is that the unrooted stuff forms a little bit smaller bunches, much smaller berries so far. Now, some of that could be because it was grafted and we're still learning. There's a lot of learning that we still have to do. But smaller berries, somewhat smaller bunches. Does it produce more acid? Yeah, I think it does produce a little bit more acid than most grapes do. Is it a savior? Like, hey, you just plant this, you can have acid for days. No, you still have to farm it a certain way. You still can't, you know what I mean? You can't just go crazy with yield. You have to do all the stuff that you always do anyway. But in general, it does have just retain its acidity a lot better than a lot of other varieties. But it's not gonna, you just can't show up either. Right. You have to farm it with intent still. I think those are, most of the differences are viticultural that I've seen so far, a little bit in chemistry, but I think that's TBD. We still need a lot more, many more iterations before we can really claim that. But those are the real differences we see so far. Flavor profile, again, we still need a lot more vintages under our belt, but it seems to me a little bit more minerally from the unrooted than from the grafted. Has a little bit more of a citrusy, lemony, lime profile, I think, from the grafted stuff that's on rootstock.
Okay.
But that could be just anecdotal. We'll see how it goes. Ask me 5 years from now. I think we'll have a much better a much better answer for you. Yeah. But it's fun. It's definitely fun.
Are you barrel ferment that, or is it go in stainless?
Yes.
Okay.
Both.
Okay.
So stainless barrels or stainless tank.
Yeah.
And or used or neutral French oak barrels.
Okay. Yeah.
Both.
You planted Vidiano. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know if that's.
You want it in Greek with a Greek accent?
Sure.
I think it's Vidiano.
Vidiano. Okay. I've never had that grape.
To me, it's the second best white grape from Greece, and it's native to the island of Crete. So Crete is this very, very big. It's the biggest island in Greece, sort of, but it's very long. island. If people have been to Santorini, it's like the next island to the south of there, the next big island to the south of Santorini. So even closer to Africa. So probably even warmer environment. But typically in Crete, they grow Vidiano in higher elevations where it can cool off at night.
Okay.
I mean, down in the cities or by the ports, it's pretty warm during the day and pretty warm at night. But you want some elevation on it. So it's grown quite a bit up in the mountains. So there's a lot of old vine Vidiano up in the mountains.
Okay.
It wasn't, think the most popular grape for many, many years, but I think there's been this new kind of renaissance that's going on in Crete as well. And by the way, I'll just say that as people as families from the mainland, maybe it hurts to say, but no, Crete grows just everything amazingly well.
Okay.
Vegetables, herbs, you name it. Like it's just a magical place for agriculture, including olives and olive oil. As much as I love, Kalamata is definitely closer to us, and there's amazing, and you got some pretty amazing olives, believe it or not, in Crete. But anyway, so I think it's native to the island of Crete. It's had this renaissance, and it's becoming probably the most planted white grape on Crete. Okay. And it's quite delicious. A little bit more flowery, I think. A little bit, whereas Assyrtiko can have a little bit of a heavy hand. In Santorini, it can have quite a bit of alcohol. It's like 14, 15% alcohol it can, but really, really super low pH, like 2.9, 3.0. Yeah. So it's this juxtaposition of higher alcohol, some sweetness, but balanced by this super high acidity or somewhat high acidity, but it's very, very low pH.
Yeah.
And Vidiano is still pretty high in acid, not as high as maybe Santorini, but also not as high in alcohol either. A bit more of a flowery quince, kind of a little bit of a peach, not tropical, but it's got a little bit of a different flavor profile and quite delicious in and of its own. I think for me, my second favorite grape of Greece, and definitely the second most popular, well, arguably second or third most popular white grape.
Okay.
Yeah, there's another Greek grape called Malagousia that's quite popular as well. And I'd say it's more like a Sauvignon Blanc-ish, symphony-ish, kind of a blend of those two.
Yeah.
It's quite popular in the north of Greece, but definitely in the south. In Crete, I think the big one that's going to make its name next is probably Vidiano.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it available through like FPS or something?
Through
like
FPS,
that?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And just in the last, 5 or 6 years, something like that. It's been, I think, since the mid 20-teens. I don't know, since that, it's been here for about 9-10 years. So kind of new. Yeah. We don't have very much of it, just enough to have a little side project and taste it. We've used it in a blend before, and we bottle it on its own and just share it amongst family, but just enough to experiment with it and decide whether we want to go all in and plant an acre or two of it in the future. But verdict is still out. I mean, it's good. It's just, Assyrtiko is challenging as it is. And so we need see some bigger market acceptance there than trying to add yet another obscure Greek variety to our mix.
Yeah. Are there any other kind of Mediterranean whites that you have your eyes on or anything that you feel like could grow well in Lodi in your vineyards?
I mean, all the Mediterranean grapes would probably grow well in and around Lodi and in Northern California, I think. But other than that, I think we're quite content with what we have on our plate right now.
Yeah.
But as far as additional ones, not yet. We don't have anything that we're really planning on going after at this point. We're just trying to grow what we have right now.
Yeah. And John, you're kind of the big Merlot proponent. Is that right?
I was, fortunately or unfortunately, I was. I mean, we, as Jeff mentioned earlier, when we bought Stampede, we ended up buying the Merlot, which was adjacent to the Stampede vineyard. And when we started the wine project, I always thought that besides having a Zinfandel, we needed additional wines, and we hadn't. I mean, we had planted the Assyrtiko, but it was a test ply at that time, and always knew that we need a second wine. And most wineries have a red wine blend or a red table wine that they sell along with other reds. And so I convinced Jeff to allow us to take the section right next to Stampede and kind of farm it the same as we do the Stampede vineyard. Not on a commercial level, but more of a quality level. And so we made the first year we farmed it and made the Merlot and tried it and on its own. And obviously it doesn't. The Merlot doesn't necessarily. It was good, but
it was really good on its own for sure.
But doesn't necessarily fit the Mediterranean.
It's a continental grape.
It's a continental
grape. We
grape.
didn't know how to make it fit with the branding that an image we wanted to put out there. But John was insistent we make it. We got to make it at least to see what it does, right?
Yeah.
And we liked it. We really we were surprised how much we liked it.
So one day we were trying wines and blending, a little bit of our Cinsault and the Carignan, and we thought, whoa, let's go back to that. But we kept going back to the Merlot being part of that blend, and it kind of fit the profile of what we were looking for in a red wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, there's other examples out there like Chateau Moussard that has Cabernet, Cinsault, Carignan, and we had Merlot. So we're like, well, let's try it with Cinsault and Carignan to see if there's something there. They're not that's in any way, shape, or way or form similar to Moussard, but at least it was something that we could, that is considered a Mediterranean wine that we could always kind of have as an inspiration. And so that's kind of how we came up with the Cinsault and Carignan portion.
Yeah. Yeah. And those...
and it worked. It really worked.
Yeah.
And trust me, I mean, what, especially when we're pouring for people, sometimes the Mediterranean varieties can be obscure and people, a lot of times want a cab. We're like, oh, well, have this Merlot-based wine. And then, they hear Merlot and they're like, okay, I want that. I want to try that. So it does help get more of our wine out there. And we grow the Merlot, and it helps us out we were able to use more of our own fruit to make wine with. And so it's just, it's another avenue for that as well.
It seems like you guys source some really great Cinsault and Carignan for that wine.
Yeah. So. Well, we make our own varietal Cinsault from a vineyard that's not too far from Stampede, and that's it's owned and operated by the Sprague family. And it's in this red, rocky, hilly soils that I described earlier, Clements Hills. And so, it's pretty amazing soils. And, hopefully we call the right pick. But, we really love the Cinsault that comes off of there. And we use that. And then we're lucky enough to be able to source some Carignan from a Mule Plain Vineyard, which is on 1910 planted Carignan on the west side of Lodi, which really helps. Usually... it's the magic sauce in that blend. It really adds a lot to the blend.
Yeah.
We're lucky enough to source that. Nero d'Avola we source from our friend Jake Devine, who's an amazing grower in and of himself. He and his father-in-law farm this plot of land on the east side of Lodi, really close to the Mokelumne River also. And it's dry. It's non-till. I'd say organic plus. It's not certified, but it's farmed organically and then some. I think borderline biodynamically farmed, with a lot of intent and just grows some amazing fruit. So we're lucky enough to get our Nero d'Avola from him.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but great things about his farming. Vineyard from other people.
There's a lot of care and a lot of intent in his farming. So even the irrigation is solar powered. So there's no power that they use for to run the pump. It's all off of solar. So quite green.
Yeah,
very green.
How did this most recent harvest go for you guys? I'm sure your wines are probably must be all in, I guess. And
we're all picked out. It was you know, I
It's a long season.
it's an interesting season in the sense that wine quality wise I think it's going to be pretty good, way above average. Like I think people are going to be quite happy with the way 2024s are going to end up in the bottle. Consumers are going to be happy. Just, just the market just sucks right now out there, right? And so, I think it was a lighter crop for sure. We were light in all our vineyards, and I think most everyone we've talked to has said it's coming in light. And then the market is really challenging. There's a challenging market right now out there. So there's, you can drive around town, you'll see there's a lot of vineyards that didn't get pruned, a lot of vineyards that haven't been picked yet. So, I think if we can weather the storm the next few years, hopefully we'll come out much better. But yeah, it's a tale of two vintages in the sense that quality is great, market sucks. So we'll see what happens out there. Yeah. But the wines I think are going to be amazing though this year. So we're quite happy. Colors, flavors, even acids are turning out better than I had anticipated or initially thought as well. So, we're pretty happy. We're long on 2024 wine quality. Yeah.
Any sort of like early favorites too, or anything that kind of jumped out? Like obviously tasting it super young, but
well, the wines are like your children. You kind of love them.
We love them all.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No, but I mean, I think right now, like the unrooted Assyrtiko is a real standout.
Okay.
We'll see, a year from now if I'm singing the same tune, but it's our best effort there for sure. I mean, even the regular Assyrtiko is going to be, I think, pretty delicious. That one, I don't know, the unrooted one is really standing out to me. Just last week, I was just tasting through it, and it was a real standout.
When I tasted through probably about a week ago too, for me it was the other Assyrtiko.
There you go.
Yeah.
But the Zinfandel is turning out to be pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So far.
Some great Zinfandels from that vineyard.
Thank you. Yeah. And we're lucky enough to work with people that take really, that really make wine with intent there. And just go back and try all of like Maitre Duchesne's wines. I mean, they're our longest, they and Fields Family, the longest running wineries that have been sourcing fruit from there. You can go back till 2013 with Fields and 14 with Maitre Duchesne and do a horizontal. And I think there's not a bad vintage among them.
Yeah.
But we're quite pleased with what everyone's done with the fruit.
You guys have any new releases or anything coming up?
Well, it's funny you should say that. No, we're going to be releasing our fall lineup next week.
Okay.
So I don't know when this will air, if this will air before or after that, but we'll have our new Assyrtiko, a new Stampede, and a new Nero D'Avola that we're going to be releasing. So
okay.
Yeah, so we have
23s,
23 Assyrtiko, 23 Stampede,
and
then a 22 Nero D'Avola.
Okay.
Yeah. That one, Nero D'Avola, it's quite a big wine. I mean, even though it's pretty low in alcohol, the 21 was 12.9, 22 is, I think, 12.5. It's amazing how much color, acid, tannin, all that grape punches, especially the way that Jake grows it. So, yeah, it needed more time in the bottle to kind of chill out a little bit. And even still, it may even need more time, but it's tasting pretty good nonetheless with a little bit of air.
You guys are making all your wines, everything's still kind of like native ferments and acids and everything.
Yeah, we don't, I mean, I'm not saying that we would never make any adjustment or if we absolutely had to, but no, we use native yeast and we don't ever really need to add acid. I don't think we have yet.
Yeah.
Had to acidulate anything. So, or we would blend it with something that if it needed it, we usually blend it.
Sure.
Let's say, but
no
enzymes, no acids, and no yeast. Yeah, we may have like a PDQ, so like something that's fermenting already. We may spike it with something that's fermenting that started from a native ferment. But that'd be the closest to inoculation that we come.
The wines feel like they just have a real kind of light touch to them.
Yeah, we definitely strive for we try to pick a little bit earlier. We want to maintain freshness and acidity and all that, and not punish the yeast too much when they're trying to trying to do their job. But no, I think for the most part we're definitely on the lower side. Like I said, like the Nero Diablos are usually in the 12s. The Zinfandel, it depends on the year, but either high 13s or very low 14s. So usually not above 14.2 or 14.3.
Yeah.
The Acirdicos are in the high 12s or 13s. Red wine blend, everything's like mostly sub 14 for sure, in the mid 13s. So not too low, but not high at all.
Yeah. No, everything seems really kind of balanced. And just, I don't know, feels like they're in a sweet spot, kind of like.
Well, we want to ride that cusp of appealing to those that want a little bit more fruit and some sweetness, but still appeal to those that love acidity and freshness in wine. So that's the goal. I'm not saying we hit it every year, every wine, but that's the goal. But we definitely want to err on the side of freshness, though, if we had to err.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about that we've kind of missed or we've glanced over or anything? Or
I think we hit everything, right, John? That we wanted to talk about.
Anything that you would like to add or anything?
No, I think
you mentioned our release coming up. And
we have a release. We have
the party.
We have a party on the 26th. That's going to be at the rodeo grounds that are next door to our vineyard. And we'll be doing a little vineyard tour and sipping of Stampede while, for those that sign up at least. So we'll be able to take some folks over there, show them the vineyard, and actually have Stampede while they're walking through Stampede.
Oh, very cool.
I think for us in the industry, it's quite common, but for folks that are not, it's kind of a unique experience for them.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing that on October 26th.
It's a family-friendly event.
Family-friendly event. Bring your kids. You can dress up.
There's a pumpkin patch.
There'll be a pumpkin across the street.
There's a pumpkin patch right across the street.
Okay.
So we welcome people to come see us. Live music. There's food and all that. So our event, that's one thing. Yeah, I guess we could let folks know about. Other than that, we just hope, we'd love people to give us their support, and other people that source from our vineyards, their support. They're right now, the industry's, like we mentioned earlier, it's a really challenging time. So if you can purchase your wine from as direct as possible from the people that or the Lodi Wine Commission, as they're big supporters of us as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we would certainly encourage people to do so.
Yeah. Perlegoswine.com?
Perlegoswine.com, P-E-R, and then Legos like the toys, L-E-G-O-S, Perlegoswine.com. And all the Perlegos_wine on Instagram and Facebook. So, well, thanks for having us on.
Oh, yeah.
We really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening today. The Perlegos Brothers wine and vineyards are a real part of the resurgence of Lodi with smaller producers. They show what a lighter touch can do. They have a fall release that's now open and a pickup party and vineyard tour coming up on October 26th. It's a great time to check out their wines. You can find the wines at perlegoswine.com and follow them at perlegos_wine on Instagram. You can follow the podcast on wherever you're listening and the Instagram at Indie Wine Podcast. And feel free to email indiewinepodcast@gmail.com with comments, questions, or feedback. If you can tell your wine friends about the podcast too and help spread the word, I'd really appreciate it. Rating or subscribing helps too. There's also a Patreon if you choose to support the podcast monetarily to allow for more episodes and to help defray other costs like travel and research book purchases. Any amount is appreciated. I have a small token of my appreciation to send to you also if you do. The link is in the show notes. We'll be back soon with part 5 of the CWA series. Have a good one.